Hello. Hello. Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unfiltered. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show Unfiltered. I'm your host, Cheps McFarlane. Thank you for joining us again this afternoon for episode 3 of our show. We have a great guest here this evening who will be joining us, Mr. Kenneth Oguzie. In the meantime, I would welcome all of our viewers. Thank you for joining. Please, you know what to do. Like, share our videos, invite others to join, start a watch party if you can. This show is all about growing our viewership and getting people engaged in the conversations that we are having. Our guests on the show are extraordinary folks, many of them my friends, acquaintances, mentors, people I've met in the course of my life who are doing some extraordinary work out there in the world. So this platform is all about giving them the opportunity to come on, have a discussion. We are going to catch up, but to talk about really the issues of the day, to talk about their experiences, to talk about their challenges in their careers, in the initiatives that they undertake, and to talk about the successes, and to also inspire our viewers with some words of encouragement in their stories and their various experiences. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have on the show Mr. Kenneth Oguzie. Mr. Kenneth Oguzie is a business consultant, an international trade analyst with experience acquired across Europe, Canada. He presently resides here in Nova Scotia, and he works in the areas of trade, investment, project financing, stakeholder management. Mr. Kenneth also was a graduate of the London School of Economics, where he received training, and he's currently the director of the Africa-Canada Trade and Investment Venture, ACTIV. This is an organization that is aiming to bridge the gap or to bring together businesses and corporations from Africa who are seeking to do business in Canada, and also businesses in Canada that are seeking to do business in Africa, to create that space for entrepreneurship and also for personal development. We are going to have Mr. Kenneth coming on here to join us live. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Kenneth, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
That's great. Good to see you, man. It's been a while.
Good to see you too. How's it going?
Things are going well down in the South Shore. And what about you? You recently came back from a trip to Cape Verde, isn't that right?
Yes. So I just got back from Cape Verde based on a project I'm doing with Dalhousie University as part of a bigger federal project to support ocean tech, around Cape Verde, and hopefully to use that as a hub to service the rest of West Africa.
Interesting. That's very nice. So how's Cape Verde?
Well, Cape Verde is beautiful. We were in a city called São Vicente. Sal is one of the more popular ones, but São Vicente is also a lovely city. Mindelo. It's nice. The people are friendly. The food was amazing. Tons of opportunities, especially around blue economy and ocean tech. So anyone who is interested in those areas, and of course any other area, I think it's worth taking a trip down there to see how things are. But I would definitely be going back because, of course, the project is going to move forward. So it is it was a good first time, and hopefully will be the beginning of many more trips.
That's exciting. Before you came on, I was just giving our viewers some background on your background and the kind of things you do. But aside from career and your business initiatives, just as a person, we're going to be talking a lot more about your own personal growth and story. So to that end, why don't you tell us a little bit and tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself?
So I'm Kenneth Oguzie. I was born in Nigeria, Imo State, somewhere in the southeastern part of Nigeria. I've been in Canada now for 6 years plus. But before then, I've pretty much lived everywhere around the world. I spent time in Malaysia, Southeast Asia, spent time in Sweden, the UK, so I've spent time in the US, and of course now in Canada. I have also done a lot of things ranging from, trade marketing to international business, which is what I do. I also do work around diversity and inclusion, which ties into people and culture. I've also had my short stint in the areas of financial services. I think for me, my mantra is around, supporting budding entrepreneurs, promoting the interest of diaspora, the West African and the African diaspora as a whole, and trying to create platforms whereby the diaspora can engage much more towards the upliftment of their people in diaspora and of course in their home country. So that's a summary of who I am.
Very, very interesting. And you've touched on a lot of broad themes there that we are going to explore as we delve further into the show. I know your business focuses on promoting trade investment between Africa, Canada, with a focus on Africa and the Atlantic regions of Canada. Can you tell us what you have on the go and the things that things to look forward to during this new year or new decade of 2020, I should say?
Yes, I think 2020 is a very important year. It's a new decade, and of course, that comes with a lot of opportunities as well as challenges as well. But basically, just a summary, my company called Africa Canada Trade Investment Venture, which I'm the co-founder. So what we do is we tend to create a platform for engagement between businesses in West Africa and the ones in Canada. But of course, we also service the needs of Africa as a whole, with a core focus around West Africa and Atlantic Canada, which is the provinces around here. So and how do we do this? We do a lot of things like trade events, trade missions, trade and investment summits, like the one we held sometime last year in March here in Halifax, which was the first ever West African Nova Scotia Trade and Investment Summit, and it was a huge success as well. So in terms of 2020, we're looking to do more work around education. We're looking to do more work around creation of awareness, because we find that a lot of times, there are still gaps in terms of knowledge and understanding on what the opportunities are existing in West Africa from the side of the businesses in Atlantic Canada. So this year we are looking to host a couple of events around this education, whereby we'll bring stakeholders. We're also looking to host a couple of webinars where we will talk about some of the opportunities, bring senior government officials and senior players in West Africa to do a couple of presentations to a wider audience globally, especially in Canada here. We're looking to do that. And then we are going to also partner with some of the big organizations here in Atlantic Canada to promote trade and investment. So we'll be hosting a couple of business cafes and expos as well. So we do have a lot on the go. So I would typically just advise viewers to stay tuned, as we launch most of these things. The communication and the ads and the marketing will definitely be very aggressive. So it will definitely come to play.
Well, wow, that's some incredible information. I hope for our viewers that are watching, that are interested in business, entrepreneurship, that they are getting ready to take down your contacts, because certainly you are a very, very good resource in terms of that area. Now, people describe you, and I'm one of those folks because I happen to know you. People describe you as a workaholic with a million things on the go. What motivates and inspires you to pursue your dreams in the way that you do?
I think, I am a big advocate of, creating change. I'm a big advocate of leaving an impact. I'm a big advocate of, creating a legacy so that when you leave the stage, people will have something they remember you for. And of course, how do you do this? First of all, you have to be like, a big picture seer. You have to think big. Right. So for me, I feel like I'm never comfortable with status quo. I always want to disrupt. I always want to change things, which is one of the things that has motivated me, into like towards setting up the business, which I do, because I saw that there was a huge gap. There was no one pretty much promoting West Africa in this region. I mean, there are a couple of people doing work, but I think it was more like on a smaller scale. So we had to like, we'll blow it, whether you want to listen or not, we'll promote Africa. If you keep shutting your doors, we'll keep knocking. And if you don't open the door, we break the door just to ensure that, that Africa is where the next, where everything is happening. So I think those are the key things that motivate me. And of course, another thing that motivates me is the fact that, I feel like we as human beings, we have a lot of capacity to do things. So I get asked the question, how do you juggle so many things? 1 minute you're doing this thing, next minute you talk about this project, next minute you're doing diversity work. How do you do this? I'm like, well, a lot of time we have to push ourselves. And if you want to aspire for greatness, then you need to learn how to develop on some of these traits. Because when greatness comes, it comes with responsibilities. It comes with being able to wear different hats, take one off and wear the next one. So I think these are the core things that, motivate me. And then one last thing I wanted to say is the fact that, I have been through a lot of things in my life where I felt like if I had choices, I would make different decisions. So I made up in my mind that, I'm going to get to that level. I'm going to build myself where in every time I come, I'm at a crossroads. I have choices. Right. I do not have to go with one thing because I feel like that's all I can do, or that's what I can afford, or that's what my capacity can take. I want to have choices. You know what I'm saying? So for me, these are like some of the core drivers that, gets me to wake up every morning, 6 o'clock and, start up my stuff. And like, what, today is a brand new day. We're going to push and, what do we have to achieve?
That is excellent. So takeaways: winners don't quit, quitters don't win.
Don't win, exactly.
Put yourself in a position where you always have choices.
Exactly.
Very well said, sir. I'm going to ask you this. So as an international trade consultant and an entrepreneurship coach, what is the first thing, and I seem to ask this to our guests who come on the show, what is the first thing you tell someone who comes to you for advice?
I think there's a lot of misconception out there. Everybody talks about the fact that you can't keep doing your 9 to 5. You need to set up a business. But I say to them, running a business is not for everyone. The fact that you're an entrepreneur, you run your own business, it doesn't make you smarter or better than other people. That's not true. It's all about 2 things: interest, motivation, and hard work. 3 things, actually. And to be honest, in all fairness, not everybody wants to live a life where they cannot shut down. I don't shut down. My phone is never off. Right. I can pick up a call 12 a.m., 1 a.m. in the night. Not everyone wants to do that. And that's fine. So the first question I ask them is, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Or, if you have a business, why did you set up your business? If they say to me, oh, I thought about it. I think this business has potentials of making money. I'm like, okay, what about the passion part of it? Are you passionate about what you're doing? Because if you set up a business and your primary goal is to make money, you might be successful, but there's good luck with getting really far with that. Because if you listen to successful entrepreneurs, people who have really made it big, So I don't mean people who are serial entrepreneurs, because a lot of time people look at the person's 12th business where they are successful. But go back to the first business they set up. It was all tied into passion. Right. Sometimes, like someone said, I was so busy chasing my dreams and passion that I forgot to make money. And then the money just started. So if you want to be able to succeed, I would ask you, is this your passion, or is this the new thing? Is this what you think? Oh, you know what? This business I hear is profitable. Everyone is making money. So I think I need to get into that line. For me, that's not really a good driver. So that's the first question I ask you. Is it your passion? The second question is, are you ready to put in the hard work? And when I mean hard work, are you ready to experience all the emotional roller coasters, the ups and downs, the fact that your phone doesn't go off, the fact that, there's nothing like time off or stuff. You could 24 hours, 247, things in your life will suffer. But at the end of the day, it's going to be worth it at the end of the day, because in the long term, you get some level of independence whereby once you have your business on what I call auto cruise, then obviously most of the hard work which you put in over the years will, make a lot of sense. So I think those are the two questions I ask you. And if you then answer me those questions and, honestly from a good space, then we can then start talking about the rudiments of business. Do you have a business plan? What are your projections in a couple of years? How much do you understand about this business and all that kind of stuff? But I think these two questions are very, very key before we progress the discussion.
Wow. Interesting, amazing stuff. Now, tell us, I think we're getting into the meat of things here. So as somebody who has come up the ranks, engaging business, tell us one of your business ventures that has been a success and one that has been a failure, and tell us what lessons you have learned from both the successes and the failures of engaging in entrepreneurship and business.
Yeah, no one likes to talk about failure, but I think the opposite of success is not failure. The opposite of success is not succeeding, but it doesn't mean you. So
wow.
Yeah, I think I had a business which didn't succeed, and I think that was about 10 years ago. So it was a mobile app company. Right. So at that point in time, I was living in the UK, and a friend of mine, we came together because, that was a time when apps have been in existence anyways for a while, but that was the point which we felt like, it was becoming very big in West Africa, and it's probably time to get into the market. It wasn't so much about passion, it was more opportunity. We felt like this was the right thing to do.
Right.
So personally, I didn't do a lot of groundwork, in all fairness. I depended so much on his expertise, but I think I should have done better. So anyways, we came together, we launched the app company. It started okay, but after a while, obviously, because of the fact that we were learning as we progressed. That was some of the issues, which typically happens in business. But of course, because of the fact that I felt like we didn't do a lot of preparation. I felt like this wasn't really my passion. Or I don't know, maybe it was his passion to an extent, but it wasn't really my passion. So probably I didn't do as much as I should be doing because of the fact that, everything was around when would the money come? When would the money come? If the money is not coming, then I don't think I want to continue with this.
Right.
So it kind of ties into the point I alluded to earlier, where I talked about the fact that passion is key. And looking back at it, I felt like one of the reasons that actually impacted that business not succeeding was the fact that I wasn't very passionate about it. And of course, I didn't do my groundwork, my research. All I knew was I looked at the figures, I did the math. There were a lot of zeros at the back, 6 zeros. I'm like, awesome, this is good. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yes. We got fired up and kickstarted that. So that's how that did not succeed. But of course, today, my trade and investment business, I would consider it a success, looking at some of the things we have achieved since we came into existence about 4 years ago. And I think some of it boils down into preparation. It took me about 1 year to dream about that business. I didn't just wake up and kickstart it. So it took about a year of planning, planning. It's something I'm very passionate about because of my international experience. I said to myself, how best can you utilize this international experience, which is awesome because when you have that, you always have like a different perspective whenever you come into the midst of people. So coupled with my international experience, my international network as well, because, I said to myself that one of the greatest strengths I have is my social capital. Like if you want to put it in layman's term, I know people,
right.
I know people. So I'm like, what, thinking about all this, then of course I have a business background. How then can I combine these skills together, in terms of building something? Then I then took my time to do research, looked at, what my immediate environment was, and of course, like the whole of Atlantic Canada, and saw the gaps. I'm like, you know what, let's move in here, knowing fully well that, it was going to be what's in business we call leading edge or bleeding edge. So leading edge means if you're the first mover, if everything works perfect, then you have the whole cake to yourself, which so far that's what's playing out right now. So putting all these things together, and then we were able to venture into that business. And, every time we're constantly reevaluating how well are we doing? Are there new opportunities coming up? How can we adjust our business, knowing fully well that the business environment is very mobile. So you always have to be able to adjust real quickly, to be able to meet the needs of the group which you are servicing or the group which you are looking to serve. So for me, those are the two, that's how I've been able to balance it and lessons learned from both ventures.
Wow, very fascinating stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching, I am here with our guest, Mr. Kenneth Oguzie. He is the director of ACTIV. ACTIV is the Africa-Canada Trade and Investment Venture. And it's an initiative that he dreamed up, and we are talking about his experience on that, his experience in life generally, and as somebody that has traveled across the continent, how all of these experiences have informed his worldview, and how this worldview informs the way he pursues his dreams, one of them being business. Thank you very much. If you're joining, please share, like, get more people to come in and benefit from this knowledge. Mr. Oguzie, Kenneth, so yes. Let me ask you this. As somebody who has lived in Europe, in Nigeria, other places in Africa, in Canada now, tell us about your experience, living as a global citizen, living in these various places, and also tell us about some of the challenges that you experienced, and also the positives that you've taken from these various places you've lived in.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, first of all, I consider myself fortunate to have had that experience, to be able to live in these places, enjoy the culture, and, enjoy the diversity existing in the world. I think for me, some of the things I've really learned, and one of them that stands out for me is the fact that when we look at people and cultures, from far, a lot of things we see people do, doesn't make sense from far. So pretty much like if you looked at certain cultures in the part of the world or in a region where you've never been before, you've never lived before, you would think, you'd be like, well, I respect what they do, but it's not really, it doesn't make sense to me. But bottom line is, if you happen to be fortunate to go to those regions and spend time with people and, tend to have an open mind, that you understand that everything makes sense, and you understand how as human beings we are so interconnected without realizing it really. So I think my experiences has differed, different, like, of course, I was born in West Africa, Nigeria to be specific. I lived in a very big city called Lagos, which is pretty much like one of the largest cities in Africa, to be honest. And my experiences in Lagos was different as a young man with, multiple, growing up, and you had like a lot of challenges. And of course, direction was one of the most important things. So I think, being able to navigate your way in such a big city with so much distractions, and then figuring out that, at some point I had to make a move, come out here in diaspora and stuff. And then, of course, Europe was quite different, because living in Europe was different from Africa in the sense that the weather is one of the things you had to deal with, experiencing winter and all that. And then, yes. And then, like I always talk about the fact that moving from a place where things like race, things like skin color, things like segregation, discrimination wasn't as obvious or wasn't such a big deal, and then you move to Europe where it's a big deal. So being able to, always make sure that you still stay focused and, remove those distractions, and always, keep an eye or focus on the larger goal, or the golden trophy, like I call it, These were things that you had to, like I had to develop the skills to be able to survive. And then moving now to North America, which is a little bit different from Europe in some ways, especially like when you have a place like Nova Scotia, you know, with the history of like what we have with African Nova Scotians, you know, like a city where there are so many layers in terms of discussions and in terms of interactions. And every time you unpack discussions, you find new perspectives, which is very, very interesting, you know. So, and to be honest, I am still learning. You know, I keep saying like knowledge is continuous. You don't know it all. And, you know, when I talk about all these experience, people are like, oh my God, you must be so smart. You know, I'm like, but I am still learning because at the end of the day, it's not linear. You know, there are so many directions, there are so many perspectives, and being able to understand when to listen and when to talk, these are very important elements. So I think I am fortunate. I consider myself privileged to be able to have, you know, experienced all this. And I would always advise people, if you have the opportunity to go to another country, to live there, work there, it takes a lot of bravery. I understand you need to come out of your comfort zone, but it is worth it at the end of the day, because I can tell you the lens which you view everything will definitely change if you're able to get some of those global life experiences.
Very well said, sir. And so what I gather from that is that we are all very privileged in various and different ways. And if we can recognize each and every one of us, no matter where you are, who you are, we have some privilege. And if you recognize that privilege and tap into the essence of it, it could help you open the door or the window to a lot of new perspectives, and also always keep an open mind in terms of unpacking stories, perspectives, history, traditions, and also culture as you look at the world, because like you said, relationships are not linear. So that is a very, very, very important perspective. Thank you for sharing that. Let's turn back to the business and entrepreneurship, just so that we can give some perspective to people in this locality who might be interested in pursuing some form of international business. What do you tell your clients about doing business internationally, especially in Africa?
Yeah, that's my favorite topic, really. So the first thing I tell them is, I ask them a question: do you want to play global? They said yes. I said, well, I said to them, if you're not in Africa, then you're not playing global.
Right.
You know, because I say to them, look at the world, look at the way the business world is globally, and don't focus on where there's opportunity. Look at where opportunity is going. Where is it going? In Africa.
Right.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to wait till when opportunity goes there and then you're a late entrant? By then, you know, smarter companies who are willing to take the risk have actually, and it's not even a risk, to be honest, because Africa is like every other market. Yes, it has its own challenges, you know, it has its unique challenges, but at the end of the day, how bad do you want it? You can't, if you don't, if you're not able to take risk as a business, then there's so much growth you can attain within a short term and long term. So the first thing I said to them, listen, you need to start thinking of doing business in Africa, and we are here to support you, you know, whatever ways you want to do it, in terms of resources, in terms of the right people, in terms of understanding the business structure, in terms of understanding the cultures available there. We would help you to get in there. And of course, we look at like Nova Scotia as a province, you know, so many businesses here, not so many, I wouldn't say so many, but a lot of businesses operate, they are very insular in terms of the way they have their operations, you know, and some of it has come in terms of the way in which Nova Scotia as a province sees ourselves. A lot of time we want to do things after the federal, at least after the federal. Canada has done it. So I'm like, how about Nova Scotia pioneering a lot of things? How about Nova Scotia looking at itself, or the Atlantic provinces looking at itself and say, right now, Canada is doing business with Africa. You know, these are the numbers, and 80% of this is coming from Atlantic Canada. What's wrong with that? Think about it, especially when you look at a place like Nova Scotia, which is like a coastal city, and a place like Lagos. There's a lot of similarities in terms of some of the things they can do together. So why not tap into a place like Lagos with more than 15 million people? Whatever good or service you want to export or import, depending on it, You only probably need 10% of the market to be able to make your business successful. So think about this in real terms, and then why wouldn't it make sense to you? Why wouldn't it be attractive to you? And then you say, oh, but I'm not too sure about the market. There are people who can support you. That's what my organization do. We also have like the global trade officers who are there, trade commissioners who are there to support you if need be. So I say to them, have an open mind, start thinking about it. It's a new decade. Stop thinking small, think big, and stop being insular in terms of the way you view international business.
Excellent. And we were having a discussion offside about this whole idea of partnership between cities,
yes,
between towns, whether it's localities, municipalities, and you were saying that part of what ACTIV would seek to do would be to construct these partnerships, create a space where a municipality like Yarmouth, for example, would be able to link up with some municipality, say, like Onitsha in Nigeria, to say, what things do we do that are similar? How can we exchange ideas, and how can we promote, the exchange of personnel, business, and all of those things? Yeah. So, do you find that people are just scared of pursuing business in Africa? I mean, at the mid-level, not at like the high level of the big corporations, but at the mid-level.
I think, yes, there is some skepticism, and some of it is understandable. Some of it is, it's still like a myth to me. I don't understand it. But I think the key thing, that's why these days, what we tend to do, we've been focusing a lot on the education and the awareness piece, because some of it's also boiled down to people not having enough information. So basically, what do people do? They just go on the internet and do a Google search of, Douala or Yaoundé, and certain things they'll pop up on the screen, and that's what they base their decision on. You know what? I'm not sure. I saw a few things. I remember going into a meeting with, I wouldn't call names, but, top people in government and, somewhere in the province. And someone was asking me on the side about the Chibok girls, like, hey, what about those Chibok girls? Have they been released? And I said to him, like, 45 minutes of discussion promoting Nigeria. I didn't get any questions from you regarding the opportunities I talked about. Are you interested? So I was like, well, of course, that's what the media feeds, feeds people. And, we know that the media has not been very, very helpful, but there is still some call to the countries as well to promote themselves, because nobody can tell your story better than you, So in the absence of nothing, people would only stick to what they see. You know what I mean? That's so. Right. So I think like the sister relationship, sister city thing we talked about, because sometimes it gets complicated when you want to do it from the macro level. You could start off on the micro level. So we have a small municipality with another small municipality somewhere in, it could be somewhere in Accra or, Takoradi or Tema or whatever it is, saying, okay, you know what, we see that we have a lot of commonalities in terms of the businesses we have operating. Can we come together, have like an agreement whereby businesses can exchange information, resources, like we can then develop into like a chambers of commerce. So these are some of the projects which, my company does in terms of being able to move some of these discussions forward and bringing all the necessary stakeholders to the table, But it is exciting. It is exciting. I think we have made some progress. I think the stakeholders are beginning to listen, but, there is still a long way to go in terms of getting people fully on board and getting them excited about the prospects of doing business in the region.
That is absolutely right. And you talked about the role of the media in this. And I think certainly that's why we are putting up a platform like this to also bring that other perspective that the corporate media doesn't really bring out in terms of the knowledge, the information, the perspective of these other places that don't necessarily fit into the narrative that, the certain mainstream corporate media wants to portray of what is happening. So certainly, we are happy that we have the opportunity and are privileged to be able to create avenues like this where people can be educated on the realities of life in various places and how to connect and pursue opportunity with passion. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to ask you this. This is one of those things that being, a diaspora, especially living in a place like Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia, for example, you wrestle with things like this. So do you consider yourself an African Canadian, a Nigerian, or both? What is your perspective on this appellation, visible minority?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I think identity is very fluid.
Right.
Identity is very fluid. It's something that I wouldn't want to use the word changes, but it's something that moves depending time and space.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I consider myself Nigerian any day. That's always my go-to in terms of, if I have to talk about what my identity is. But of course, there are a lot of layers in terms of, experiences, because your identity is shaped not only by your culture, but also your experiences. So your life experiences and a couple of other things. So of course, the fact that I have lived, in so many parts of the world, there are a lot of things that might make me different from someone who's maybe like a Nigerian who has been living in Nigeria their whole life, and it's not about good or bad. It's more about perspectives. It's more about the fact that you always bring a new dimension to discussions because of how you have been influenced by cultures across the world and how you have decided to then create your own unique identity.
Right.
So we talk about things like, African Canadians, we talk about things like African Nova Scotians. There are so many lingos out there. And then you talk about people of African descent. And what I have found when I have discussion with a lot of people, depending on their perspectives or their life experiences, that actually determines what group they want to be identified as. Mm-hmm. I keep it simple. I say, depending on what it is, I could call myself a global citizen, or I could call myself a Nigerian. That's what I do most of the time.
Right.
But it's very, very touchy. It's a touchy topic, and everyone has multiple perspectives when they talk about it. Visible minority, that one is that even gets complicated. That even gets more complicated because visible minority, people talk about visible minority. What about invisible minority? Knowing fully well that a lot of people don't want to consider themselves as minority or don't want to consider themselves as visible minority, but they look visible. And then they are tied to the minority group, which some of them don't want to be tied to, but they face the same challenges.
Right.
They face the same challenges. So I remember, like, when I was in the UK, a lot of times you will hear things like, people will be like, oh yeah, so someone has like an Igbo first and last name, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm English, but my parents are Igbo. So which the first time I heard that was very strange. That was weird to me, but I'm like, how can your parents be from somewhere different from you? But you have, the last time I checked, I've not seen an English person, someone who is British, who has an Igbo first and last name. So these were some of my, my first like reaction, like, oh my God, what's going on here? Right. And then after a while, I started understanding how in life we have given people the freedom to choose whatever identity they want to go to, or they want to like move towards.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's very fluid because it changes. Because there are people whom, 5 years ago, they wanted to be addressed or seen in a setting where 5 years later, things change for so many reasons, like you and I know, So I think it's one of those discussions where, to be honest, there's no one, even when you look at some of the policy documents we have flying around in the province, there are still like a lot of debates around who classifies as what.
Exactly.
And you cannot speak for a community. You cannot speak for an individual. It's only the individual involved that can say, this is what I want to be classified, and you just have to work with that, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very, very good perspective on that, and I'm glad that I raised that up, because those are some of the substantive things that we need to talk about more.
Exactly.
We don't really get to have a lot of space to have those kinds of discussions.
Yes.
And so typically, you find that when you find people in a place where they are discussing about one thing that intersects with all of these, perspectives of identity that have informed the way they are reasoning about something, it becomes very limited, because usually we don't have a lot of space to really deconstruct all of these topics, and then be able to formulate a way in which we can have conversations around issues that touch on them without necessarily, clashing heads with each other. So that's a good perspective. Let me ask you this. So as someone with a tremendous experience in the diaspora, living in the diaspora, what can you tell people who want to travel from Africa to the West and who believe it is easy out here to make it? What can you tell them about life in the diaspora and the challenges and some of the things that people should know if they are planning on traveling out to pursue greener pastures?
Yeah. Well, I think, so of course, the first thing is you tell, the first is will people listen, but that's another discussion. That's another discussion, right, because the usual response will be like, oh, if it's so great, why do you still live there? Why don't you move back? That's something. But I think for me, the key thing is, people want to move into their countries for different reasons. Some of it is economic, some of it is more like people who are running from conflict or wars or whatever it is. But I'm just going to focus on the economic side of things, which we have seen change in the last couple of years. Because what has happened has been, we have seen a lot of more people who fall into middle class and even upper middle class leaving their home countries, like in West Africa, to move to like Canada or the US, or whatever. Okay, mainly Canada, I should say, So that has changed, and basically that kind of creates a whole new set of dynamics, because for a lot of people, we'll typically say to them, hey, you want to move because, I want to move because this is where I am. I don't have anything going on. I've graduated from university. I've not been able to make a living for myself, blah, blah. But the message is that you have to realize so many things. Someone once said, even if you have a career going on, like in your country, West Africa, or wherever you're coming from, always realize that every time you move, you lose 5 years of your life. That's the average for a lot of people.
Right.
Because if you're, for example, if you're a trained lawyer, for example, you know what you have to go through. You need to go through all the license process. Right. If you're a doctor, you need to have, we have met doctors who have been 10, 15 years. They've not been able to get their residency. So they now have to look for another career in total,
That's right.
So you have to be prepared. And when, sadly, when that phone call comes, they call me and you and say, hey, I'm so frustrated. This is what's going on. And the first question I ask, what were your expectations? What were your expectations? And I understand that most people do have unrealistic expectations, because they felt like, what? I heard there's so much opportunity, but they don't understand what are some of the layers and what are some of the barriers existing. And of course, we can overcome the barriers. I don't want to preach. I love to preach hope. I love to preach progress, but I still want to stay as realistic as possible.
Right.
So the first thing I would typically say is, think about it. Are you ready to lose a couple of years of your life? Are you ready to, I don't want to say start from the beginning, but are you ready to understand that you might be able to venture into things that you would never in your wildest dream feel like you would be going back to do at this point in time?
Right.
Because remember that your utmost goal initially is survival. If you want to look into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, survival will be your utmost goal, your first goal, which probably could take you through the first 1 to 2 years, and then before you start thinking about personal development and all this stuff. And that's if you ever come out of the survival mode. Because you and I know that there are a lot of people who have actually migrated and have been in survival mode for 10 years, 15 years of their life, pretty much, And that boils down to so many reasons, from lack of preparation to, some of them not having the adequate skills to be able to navigate this environment, or the adequate skills to be able to break into the labor market or business world, depending on what their preferences are. So I would say, are you ready to, lose a couple of years? Are you ready to, venture in things that you've never thought about? And then, are you also ready to understand the fact that you might have to face new challenges that you've never, ever felt that you would face in your life? So depending on what it is, it could be race, it could be discrimination and all of this, but you still have to stay sane, So you need to be mentally strong to be able to survive and cope. You need to develop coping mechanisms. I've seen a lot of people break down, like, this is too much. I can't believe that this is, I'm like, well, that's what is there's a lot of information out there telling people and making them understand. But, it's humans are like that. Humans are always like, we tend to think, you know what, I think, I'm strong enough. I am a tough person. I think I can navigate it. Fair enough, you might be tough, but the only way to find out is when you make the move. And by then you can't, it's not easy to revert it, because even if you finally say, you know what, I'm done, this is not working, I'm moving back, that's brave. But remember, you've lost a couple of years of your life and, you can't get it back. So these are things that are worthy of consideration before you just jump on the bandwagon of, I want to join the abroad people league.
Right. So that's a very, very good perspective. And you talked about coping mechanisms and being mentally being strong. And one of the things for us, we spend time growing up back in Africa, is that mental wellness and coping mechanisms are not some things that in our culture are very well developed in terms of how we view it. We have different approaches. So certainly in this society, it's very, very well developed. I mean, over the last few years, you've seen a lot of talk about mental wellness, people taking care of themselves. So I'm going to ask you, what are some of your own ways in which you coping mechanisms or ways in which you navigate, sort of the brutish environment in which we have to operate in this society?
Well, so for me, I think one of the key things I've done is I'm a good listener. So I listen to stories of people who have been able to, go through some of this process. Nothing is new under the sun. At the end of the day, it's some of the challenges you and I are facing, or every other person is facing. There's been a group of people who have been through it as well. So first of all, I listen a lot. I love to talk with people and say, hey, how was your experiences? How did you navigate it? And then we can then talk about constructive ways of, being able to stay mentally sound and all that. Right. And of course, some people have also resorted to, the old-fashioned way of religion. Religion is very, very important for people, I'm not a big advocate. I'm more of a spiritual type of person, and it works for me. But I still don't question people who are very religious, because I say to someone that, when you look at it, imagine if you take away religion from, this, a lot of people would actually not be able to survive or function in this society.
Right.
Religion gives them hope. And that's something, hope is one of the fundamental things that can help a man stay strong. And when I mean man, I mean a man and woman in this context, just to, be gender sensitive. So I think religion is actually one of the ways people have used. I do more spirituality, so I do a lot of, quiet thinking, meditation, whatever you might call it. I do a lot of that as well. But for me, I think my ambitions drive me. I'm so ambitious that I pretty much want to change the world. So sometimes I don't even remember all the barriers, the obstacles around me. So it's very unique. It doesn't work for everyone, because people feel like, if I'm not mentally sound, or if I'm not in a good headspace, how can I still chase my dream? But I do it the other way around. I use my ambitions and my dreams to help me go through some of these issues that, things that can actually create mental health issues for individuals. So that's how I do my own. But, people have different. But you might want to talk about what works for you too, Jeff.
Right. No, I hear you, and for me, part of it is almost the same principles. I use my ambitions, my dreams, my goals to sort of inform how I take care of myself and how I cope with other things, right? So in the face of pressure, sort of what I want to achieve sort of guides me on how I deal with that pressure, right? And of course, we're fortunate that we have so many, with the advent of technology, we have so many ways now, like you can do meditations, you can do those things, you can have them accessible right on your phone if you want to do that, but it's certainly, mental health is certainly very, very important. If you don't take care of yourself, then you can't take care of all the other things that are dependent on you to take care of.
Exactly.
Right? So it is certainly very important. And talking about that, having a very strong, supportive partner and family is also part of that. And I'm being sensitive to people who might not have, very close family, but we're talking about family in terms of, you know, not immediate blood family, but family can be the people that support you, your support
Yes.
network,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
so speaking about that, let me ask you this: you have a wife, you have children. So how challenging it is? Is it to be a family man, raising children, and embarking on all these ventures?
Well, it's not easy. It's, you know, and I'm sure like you can relate, and a lot of people can relate to who are in that situation. But I think at the end of the day, I think for me, one of the key things is planning. Have been able to have that balance, in terms of maintaining, your family responsibilities, spending time with your loved ones, realizing the fact that at the end of the day, that's what really matters, over any other thing you are doing. But I think planning, so if you have plans like, oh, this is what I need to do at this point in time. Yes, I talked about the fact that, my phone is always buzzing and all that, but that doesn't mean that I cannot pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm going to call you back because, I'm in the middle of stuff with the family and stuff like that. So we still have to do all of that. That's very, very important. And then, of course, the other part is about understanding, being able to, if the family, being able to ensure that the family understands, the nature of what you do and why you have to do it. Even as young as my kids are, I always still have to explain to them. Like I just, to do this interview right now, I needed the quietness. So I had to read the riot act to them, like, hey, for the next 1 hour, no one steps in here, and, I said to them, because daddy needs to do something and this is important. And, they agreed, and they know that after an hour, I'm going to come back to them and do what I need to do with them. So, being able to create that platform whereby there's understanding and there's mutual respect, that's also very, very important. And, and then of course, when there are downtimes, in business, there are downtime in whatever you do, making sure that those downtimes, you use them, judiciously, you make sure that you use them to support your family. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a good relationship with them, or if you create some sort of boundaries, and which affect the communication, then functioning in your business or your venture or whatever you are doing is going to be a challenge. So we make sure that we prioritize that in a way without necessarily make anything suffering from, creating that priority.
By the way, I know it's your daughter's birthday today, so happy birthday to her.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So ensure that she knows that we here at Unfiltered are wishing her a happy birthday and thank her for allowing her daddy to take some time off to come and provide some information and help inspire our viewers here.
Yes.
Let me ask you this question. What advice do you have for people who are thinking about marriage? As somebody who's been married for a while now, certainly there are always challenges, but what would you tell anybody who's thinking about it?
I mean, of course, the go-to or the usual response would be about patience,
Right.
Patience. It's not even unique to marriage. Like having two adults with, different perspectives, constantly residing in the same space for a long time, that is a problem. That is an issue on its own, So understanding that anything that is happening is not unique to the both of you, depending on what, it's not unique to both of you. That's the first thing, because people sometimes personalize things so much. Of course, we do have issues where, some partners are probably not true to themselves and all that whole issue. But understanding that first of all, that some of the issues you're facing is not unique to yourself. Having that understanding is very, very important. And of course, patience, you need to learn how to be patient, because if you're not patient, then every little thing is going to trigger stuff. And, that's how things just blow up. And at the end of the day, nobody wins. Right. Nobody wins.
Right.
So that understanding, that patience, and of course, the last one, respect. People need to respect each other. People need to actually understand the boundaries as well. A lot of people think the fact that you're married means automatically our dreams has to follow a line, everything has to be together. I'm sorry, that's not a practical advice anyone tells you, because what would happen is at the end of the day, the dreams will align towards one person, And then what then happens is after 10 years, someone turns around and start blaming you that I gave up everything in my life for you and you're grateful for it. So being able to find a way to ensure everybody follows their dream. There is a time to be together and there's a time to work separately. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as the communication is there and people understand that I'm going to support you, whatever you're doing, then everyone will be fine at the end of the day. But I have seen a lot of couples who feel like they have to align their dreams and their vision. And it's like, yeah, sure, I can do that. I love you so much. I want to do that. But then what happens is after a few years, oh, you know what? I gave up all this because of you. And then I was like, okay, so some of those things are really, really unnecessary, you know, and if people actually understood the fact that human beings are distinct, you know, we are different, we have different dreams, which some of these things, we have carried them for years, and this is now the time to achieve it. And then you tell me I have to suppress it because I love you. Like I always say, love is not enough to keep two people together. I keep saying it is bigger than that.
It is certainly bigger than that. It is more than just love. It is
more than just love.
Yes, it is more than just love that is required for two people to commit to that commitment of being together and thriving despite all their diversities that exist in their beings and in their worldviews. Thank you very much for that. That was a very powerful response. I'm going to ask you this, and we are coming up to the top of the hour where we'll be wrapping. We've been having a conversation with my very good friend here, Mr. Kenneth Oguzie. And we've canvassed a lot of topics, but prior we were talking about Africa and people moving here. And I had wanted to ask you this question about integration. I went to do an oil change the other day, and as I was sitting at the shop, and I was talking to a gentleman there who was actually the owner of the mechanic shop, and he was telling me about the fact that you know, he's lived many places, and he said, you know, he's always so excited when he sees new people moving into the community and just bringing in their culture. And you know, he said that's so exciting. But then he said something, he said, but at the same time, you know, there's always this expectation also that you integrate and sort of act in the way that things are. So where do you strike that balance? Or if at all, do you think there is a balance to be struck between integration into a new community or a new place where you move into, and also projecting, bringing your difference so that it can help other people see the world in another light?
I think that's a very good question. And a very good example is when you hear people say things like, you know, you have someone who, you know, maybe African person, or like, let's just say randomly from Nigeria, born in England, but from Nigerian parents, or born in Nigeria, moved to England. And then people say things like, when the positives happen, he's described as British, but when it's negative, he's described as Nigerian, or whatever. And people say, or people try to question where you owe your allegiance. I'm like, why does it have to be one of the two? It could be a third. You know, it doesn't have to be this or this. So integration is one of those topics I have a very strong opinion about, because I've heard people say things like, one of the issues I have is people move here and they stick to themselves. They stick to their group. They don't integrate. Right. But I say to them, do you realize why people stick to themselves? A lot of times it's for one thing, safety. People feel safe and are themselves when they are within their groups. Right. So it's two things here. We also have to see how can we support people to integrate. If people think, or if people perceive the fact that, you know, the environment is welcoming, or they see platforms to integrate, open, genuine platforms, a lot of people will take the opportunity to integrate better than, you know, and I'm saying this based on, you know, the other who is saying that, you know, this group of people are not integrating. Right. So people just do not want to, you know, I mean, of course, by virtue, everyone naturally, you gravitate towards people who share the same culture identity as you. But I think the integration piece is a function of, or the role of integration is played both by the host community and, of course, the individuals themselves. You know, so you can actually integrate into a culture or an environment and still maintain your culture, maintain your identity, and create a whole new whatever for yourself. You don't have to give up one to be the other. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and that's what people struggle, because a lot of time when I hear people talk from people's community talk about this, they say, oh, no, this is not Canadian, this is not Canadian. I'm like, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Everyone should be free to fit into whatever space, pick up this, drop this, pick up this, drop this. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what makes us human, and we should learn how to appreciate it instead of question it or criticize it.
We should celebrate our difference.
Exactly.
And find ways in which we can complement each other's difference.
100%. That's it. You just summarized it.
Thank you very much. One final question. We are at the top of the hour, and this is a question that I generally like to ask all of our guests. How can we support each other better as immigrant folks living here in Nova Scotia and Canada in general? And I would just say that, you know, I typically use the term immigrant folks simply for distinction. Many of the immigrants who came here, whether first generation, second generation, third generation, many become Canadian citizens.
Yes.
Again, back to that idea, I see myself as a Canadian. I see myself, you know, my view of identity is fluid. And so, so when I use that terminology, it's not because I'm trying to create a distinct, but it's simply just to identify this particular group of people. So, so how can we as immigrants to this country or to this province support each other better?
And of course, I won't go too deep in the other session, but there's also a school of thought that will say we're all immigrants. So everyone living in Canada is an immigrant. Every single person.
Exactly,
you know,
right?
Except you're talking about the natives,
yes,
the Aboriginal people. Then obviously they are the ones who, we are on their land.
They're
and we
the original people of the land. Yes,
exactly. They are the only probably non-immigrants. So well, of course, we have then the settlers. But I mean, for the sake of the discussion, I know where I understand the question, and I'll probably just address it from that perspective. So I think one of it is more about being able to continue, to have support systems. I appreciate platforms like yours, which you've created. You're doing a wonderful job, which is out there, amplifying our voices and helping us to tell our stories. For me, that is a very, very fundamental part, because there are a lot of moving parts towards growth and development and self-sufficiency of these different groups. And the media and platforms like yours actually plays a big role in doing that. Because at the end of the day, when you look at things as simple as jobs, a lot of times people don't get into positions, immigrants don't get into positions because of some of the stereotypes or unconscious biases which are out there. Platforms like yours challenge those biases, or talk about, demystify some of the myths which are out there, and provide information to some of the people, which some of it stems from ignorance, to be honest. Right. So I think that's one of the ways, having more platforms like yours, that's one of the ways that can help. I'm also an advocate of, we rise by lifting others. So basically, a lot of people like me or yourself who have been in the community for a while, we need to understand that we need to take that elder position in terms of supporting some of the new people coming here, from international students to new immigrants. How can we support them? Can we help in our needs? Can we use our social capital to help them with jobs or whatever opportunities they are seeking? And of course, the associations too. We have some of the associations like the Cameroonian Association, the Nigerian Association, which is having the election in 2 weeks' time. So it's exciting for a lot of us, because there'll be new leadership continuing from the good job which the previous leadership did as well. So cultural associations like that, or I like to call them socio-economic associations now, because I think you cannot distinguish between both of them. They are more interwoven.
Right.
Yes, and of course, people come here majorly for economic reasons. So if you want to have an association that would attract people to work with you and support you, there needs to be a strong socio-economic focus around that. So those very important. Yes, very important. So those kind of platforms, I think, are very, very useful in terms of supporting the immigrant communities here, in terms of their settlement, in terms of their growth, in terms of their progress as a whole. And another thing too, for a lot of us that have kids, we also need to help each other, have discussions, because the kids will be navigating a different culture. Their experience will be totally different from the one you and I had. Because, Some of them were born here, they grew up here. They don't know another world. This is the only world they know. We know so many worlds. So we are probably a little bit more equipped to deal with some of the issues which they might have to face as well. Right. So being able to have those conversations early, being able to share perspectives, and being able to talk about best practice on best ways to navigate it, these are some of the ways we can support each other as a community.
Thank you very much. It has been a powerful hour with Mr. Kenneth Oguzie, and wow, very inspiring. I just want to ask you this quick. So are you running for any of the positions in the upcoming elections?
Unfortunately, no, I am not. But as usual, I am supporting the organization as a whole, and I'll continue to support it in the different ways. And of course, my business, I work closely with the organization because it's promoting trade and investment. So I don't have any option. So in fact, in the next hour, I'm actually supposed to go live with the organization to promote the election and talk about why people need to come out en masse to vote for their right candidates and all that. So it's exciting, and I'm really impressed with how far the organization has come, just like the Cameroonian Association as well, and some of the other diaspora associations there. So let's all keep doing what we're doing, and let's keep moving this forward, because I believe that someday we'll see we'll see whatever thing that we have set out to achieve at the end of the day.
You have spoken very well, and I certainly commend the Nigerian Association. I know that you are doing these big online elections now, where people have to actually campaign and do all these things. So it's very professionally done, and that is kind of what we should strive for. You start building, you strive for excellence. You might not get perfection, but at least you keep striving for that, and that is the whole essence of progress. So I certainly commend the organization, and I know you do a lot of work with the organization. Thank you very much for coming on, sir. And please, if you can tell our viewers, if anybody is interested in getting in touch with you, please tell them how they could get in touch with you and how they could reach your organization, ACTIV.
Well, so we have so they can go on our website, which is www.activ, ACTIV, which is Africa.com. Also, they can also send us an email on info at activafr.com. So it's info at activafr.com. So, and then we'll definitely reach, get back to them with whatever information they require from us.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sure I would love to bring you back onto the platform for further discussions. There is a lot of other things we could talk about.
Sure.
Some discussions that we've had in the back. So as our viewership grows, I would love to bring you back. And perhaps next time when I bring you back, we'll be able to make those informations of your business appear on the screen rather than have you read them.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you so much for having me, and keep up the great job, chaps.
Thank you very much. Well, fellow users, fellow viewers, everybody who has joined us today, thank you for joining us. We hope you've liked this conversation. We hope you've been inspired, and we hope you've taken something out of this conversation that might be useful to you or useful to somebody you know. And I'm asking you, the viewers, to participate more in the show as we go forward. We will be asking you to send in questions for our guests as we carry the show forward. And also tune in next Saturday. We have a very, very important and very, very interesting guest. She will be joining us next Saturday again at the same time. And we would love to have you, and we would love to have you participate in the conversation as well at that time. So thank you. Thank you for joining. Have a great evening, everybody, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.